Part of the project will start right here. What we want to do is remove this hot top, which has really been invaded with grass. It's no longer a useful place for our children to play, and it divides them from the children who are playing on the equipment. In this area is where the amphitheater will go. The materials and supplies for the amphitheater have already been donated. All we need next is to have this hot top removed, and we're ready to go with the amphitheater. If you look a little farther, just beyond that hot top area, you can see the dome, the seesaws, and the sandbox. That bit of those 3 pieces of playground equipment will be moved to the wood chip area. So we've consolidated the area where children will be playing on equipment so that it's really easy for teachers to watch them, and they really have the safety and comfort of wood chips. So those are going to be moved. We want to keep them, and then that way that area will be consolidated. As you look out to the playground area, everything will be located in one convenient spot. Let's take a walk over to the woods and see what we've accomplished so far. This is the wooded area where we did a lot of the clearing of the invasive species. There are 4 that we were looking for. It's the bittersweet, it's the Norway maple, the rose, the wild rose, and the burning bush. The burning bush was pretty easy to remove, and it's a common plant in the New England area because it's really pretty in the fall. You'll see them in the yards of New Englanders. They turn a bright red and look a little bit like bamboo, but boy, once they take over an area, the other things, the native plants, really have a difficult time growing. The plant that became my biggest enemy as we were removing the invasive species was the wild rose, the rose that is not native to New England but was brought here from somewhere else. It's very, very thorny. It grows long vines that wrap themselves around each other and other trees in the area. They were very difficult to remove, and they were one of the biggest threats to the kids who wanted to enter the woods because they would tear their clothes, and they really grab hold and pull on your skin. They really are hard to get rid of. Another one is bittersweet, and we're all familiar with that in the fall. It has that beautiful red berry. The berry is not good for birds, but they do eat it, and they spread the seeds everywhere. The vines that wrap themselves around trees, telephone poles, again and again, they'll bring down trees even, so we brought a lot of the bittersweet out. Another invasive tree is the Norway maple. It looks very much like the sugar maple, but it is not a valuable tree, so we thinned those out so the sugar maples and the cherries and apple trees and the native trees would have a chance to grow. So we did clearing from this edge of the playground all the way down to the far edge of the playground. We had piles and piles of trees and vines and shrubs and roses that were chopped up and hauled away. And you'll see when we take a look at the wooded area how accessible it is now that those plants are gone. This is a beautiful area that we discovered after removing the invasive plants. You can see that right now it looks kind of brown because we've pulled them out, ripped them out, and actually sprayed them with an organic herbicide so that they won't grow back. We've discovered that wonderful archway that kind of invites our students and adults as well to head back into the woods. They're very visible, and we were very careful to note whether there was poison ivy. We found none. So when kids go back there now, they'll find branches to sit on, stumps to sit on, and if you could hear, there are birds singing back there now that I don't remember noticing before. We've really opened up the woods, and it invites us and our children to appreciate the nature around our playground. This area of the woods is a perfect example of all the work that's been done by Urban Tree Service. They came in and took down the bigger trees, any hanging branches that we discovered as we were working in the woods, and we asked them specifically to leave the logs and the stumps behind so children can use those in their creative play. Right in front of us here are some of the red marks that we were using to tell whether plants should be moved or not. Before we came on work teams, Terrence Parker came out earlier with a red spray paint and would identify invasive species that way. So we were careful about taking them down. And the more we worked with Terrence, the more we knew about why we were taking trees down and actually began to identify invasive species on our own. Looking back at the parking lot, if you've been a visitor to Central School when it's raining hard, you've seen the water running off the parking lot and coming rushing down near that small blue spruce off into the ditch that is beyond the woods here. This is where our water garden will go. Civil engineers of South Berwick have generously spent time designing and checking out the slope and the site to make sure that we're putting in a water garden that will slow down the flow of that water that runs off the hot top, so that by the time it reaches the ditch, the culvert down there, that it has had a chance to percolate, and a lot of the things that run off from the parking lot will be absorbed and taken into the soil before reaching that ditch. It slows down the flow, it reduces erosion, and there will be a wonderful park where children, we call it a water garden, a wonderful area where children can watch water as it flows and finds its own way down to the ditch. We were so excited when we came back for our second work day when we found that students or children had come into the woods and had started using those branches to build a lean-to or a tent. We found scrap materials, and you could tell where they had gathered inside. It reminded me very much of reading the Boxcar Children when I was young. They had little cups that were broken and things that they had found in the woods. We hope that they'll be building fairy houses, having meetings with stumps as chairs. It's a very inviting area, and as over time the species that should be here will start filling up these empty spaces, and it will be a wonderfully inviting place to spend time during recess or during the week or on weekends when families are together at Central School's outdoor playground. As you're looking at our playground, I know you remember that we've always been so fortunate to have a big grassy field area. And Terrence Parker was very, very careful to maintain that big grassy field area. There's still a big enough field for kickball, softball, and soccer. But what he's done is soften the edges by taking up some of the sod, and over time we'll be planting meadow grasses and taller grasses so that students and adults as well can see how the change takes place from the woods to taller grasses to shorter grasses and finally the field area. And that's the way it would naturally occur if we hadn't intervened early in the life of this area outside of Central School. You'll recognize these as maple leaves, but these are the kind of maple leaves that you would find on a Norway maple. And we learned to identify them by identifying a bud that should be on the end if it's a sugar maple. We didn't find it here, and we knew we had made the right choice when we looked up and saw the red paint on this tree. That identifies this tree as an invasive species that should be removed. Wow, this is a perfect example. We have reached an area where we haven't been able to clear the invasive species yet. This was not spray painted red, but this is a perfect example of what burning bush looks like in the fall. Those bright red leaves are just the beginning, and this burning bush tree reaches way up and way over, and reaching right out through the fence here is one of the invasive roses. And you can see the thorns are very, very long. They're tenacious. If you pull on one branch, it seems like the other branch just reaches out and grabs you somewhere else. And you can see that they're all intertwined right here where we've been working, where we haven't gotten to work yet. You can see the burning bush reaches right over and meets a rose bush. And those again are invasive species that are not good for birds and crowd out the native plants.